Well, I remember meeting a young lady with a really big voice that joined us on tour in the late 1990s, and all of us that were on that tour knew Nikki was destined for big things. Funny how things work out. What we thought her path was going to be and what it ultimately turned out to be were beyond our wildest imaginations. And one of the things I love about doing this podcast is hearing from my friends how they found success and significance in the face of adversity and how God has continued to open doors for those that he's given great talent to. So I am excited to reconnect and hear her story today. Welcome to the One Degree of Andy podcast, my friend Nikki Leonti. It has been a long time.
It's so long.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was it Freedom Blast?
Freedom Blast. Yep. Uh-huh.
That was my very last CCM tour was with you.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was so awesome. We had Russ Taff and Wayne
Yeah. Wayne
Watson
Watson.
on the
Uh Feels like was there somebody else? It was just the four of us?
yeah.
Because I just had Jeremy Deibler on and he did a Freedom Blast with us with FFH.
Okay, yeah, they
And it
were not
was
on.
yeah, it was Wayne, it was us, Wayne, FFH, and the Darrens. Do you remember them?
Yes, they came out after me
That's
because
right.
I only did half the tour.
That's right.
Came
That's
on,
right. So
but
how
y'all
old were you? How old were you when we met you on that tour?
barely 18, I think. Like I
Okay.
think it could have been the weeks of my 18th birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really.
And
So
what record would you have been touring?
oh, this I
Was it
think
The Shelter
was
Me?
Shelter Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just listening to that today. Man, so good. Like I'm like, no wonder you were on your way up. I mean, that's a great sounding record.
John and Dino Elefante did
Yeah.
that.
They
And
did
I
the whole
think
thing.
yeah, they did the whole thing. That
Wow.
was a record. It had some radio songs and
Yeah.
yeah, that was all a really great time.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of your career because, we there were a lot of young ladies your age that were making their way into Christian music, and I remember taking out Jackie Velasquez when she was like 15. Her and her mom came out on tour with us, and we were like, oh man, she's gonna be huge. And then like Stacey Arico, and there was oh
They
gosh, yeah, there were so many young ladies out there that were like late teens that were getting signed by labels. And how did you get your first break into Christian music?
Okay, so before I signed and did the record with John and Dino, I was living in California and I signed on at 13. I signed to like an independent Christian record label. And that music is what John and Dino heard to sign me. So I think it was like by the time I was 14, I was doing a showcase for, Pamplin Music, I think was
Yeah. Oh,
was the
that's
record.
right. You were on Pamplin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they flew out to Corona, California, where I grew
Yeah.
up, and not much happens there. Um, and they watched me do a showcase, and I ended up, signing the deal, and they were putting me on multiple tours just to, help me get my sea legs with performing and traveling and all
Uh-huh.
the things.
But how did you get started though? I mean, like, were you just grew up singing in church? Was this something that, you were performing at a young age? Like, when did all that start to take shape?
I think I was at the tender age of 7 or 8 when I started getting calls to do, church solos at
Yeah.
is around, the area. And so I would do, offertory songs and things like that. My mom did a lot of church ministry, and my parents were in like outreach and prison ministry. So they were always, busy doing music and traveling and things like that. So just watching them, and they would bring me to their outreaches to open up for my mom. And we had like a little family worship band, and I sang my mom's, like, I don't know if you'd call it background vocals as a worship band, but I
Yeah.
sang on the praise team, and my dad played drums, my mom sang and played the bass, and my brother played the keys. And so that's how I got started.
Wow. So kind of like family harmonies and that Like what kind of like who were you singing? What songs were you singing back then?
Well, on a personal level, when I was able to express my Christian music, through my own artistry, it was like Krista Lewis and,
Oh wow.
Cece Winans and
Yeah.
just great big female voices. And then, for the church stuff, we were, doing all the Gary Oliver, Higher Dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
soulful and that sort of thing. So there was a lot of like Winans family kind of woven in, and that's where I got a lot of my inspiration.
So then you get signed by Pamplin at what, like 16, 17 years old? Is that about
Mm,
right?
15.
15. Wow.
Yeah, we had been starting like the record label courting process at the age of 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what was that like? I mean, what was that like at being that young and knowing you had a record deal and going into the studio and finding songs, and like how did that change a typical teenager's life?
I think my parents kept me like in perspective, like beyond. So I was like, I really like I was able to contain the joy in a different way. There was always this outreach perspective. It was like that's the only thing that matters here, and so I really did enter it into a as a person who was like, well, this is an extension of what we've done in outreach ministry. I mean, I was completely uh unaware of the process and what that meant, going out, being on a Prevost and touring
Yeah.
with people, going from just driving down to the local park to sing. I'm like, this will just be the greatest opportunity to do more ministry on a broader scale,
Yeah.
and I didn't understand that there was an industry aspect of what I was getting ready to do, wildly unprepared. And, I traveled, I think you remember, I traveled alone mostly, without my parents were never able to go on any dates with me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
I would
I don't remember your parents being out on tour with us at all.
I didn't have like a
Yeah.
parent or guardian
Oh
on most
man.
of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot at once. I went from like a homeschooled, no sleepovers, no secular music to touring the country
Oh
by
man.
myself.
Yeah, that's quite the culture shock. Even for a Christian tour, it's kind of the Wild West out there. I mean, we're it's just a bunch of people out there, a bunch of artists out there having a great time and also trying to get through life and, in one piece.
Absolutely. I think my parents thought like a monastery of nuns would come and pick me up from the house and I'd fly out into the world and be protected. And we all
Nope.
would all just be meditating in prayer throughout the day. And like, they didn't know. I'm from this small town and like, they didn't know
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
getting to do. They couldn't go out with me because I had younger siblings
Uh-huh.
and my dad was a barber in Corona, California. Just, he couldn't take off and just start traveling around the country and leave his younger kids,
So did
So
you move to Nashville? Did you home base out of Corona, or what did you do in that during that time?
I home based out of Corona for a few years.
Uh-huh.
Just
Even
with
after you signed your label deal?
yeah. Well, I did stay with John at his house. And that was also like I went from this small 1,000 square foot house in Corona with like, I think 6 of us at one point to John's big old, house with his pool. And I had my own suite. So it was like a movie, like this
Yeah.
makeover movie going from these different lifestyles. But I lived with him during the creating of the album
Hmm.
and then just would fly back and forth from Corona. I did eventually at 17 get an apartment in Franklin and then was made that home base for a little while.
Yeah.
So
And who were the first artists that you toured with?
oh wow. I think okay, so my very, very, very first tour, which was like a huge change in my life, was with Truth. And
Wait,
so
seriously?
yes, I opened up for them. And they're doing like 5, 6 shows in a week.
Oh
And
yeah.
the
Well, that's where
label
I came from. Yeah, I came out of Truth. That was for him. That's where we all came out of. So it's interesting. Yeah, because I guess in the mid late '90s, Truth was a lot different than it was when we were with them in the '80s. They were a lot more pop, mainstream, doing more of the artist thing than they were, decades before that.
oh yeah, and they were signed to Pamplin at the time as well. So
Wow.
that's how
I
we
forgot about that. Yeah.
and so they're like, how do we get this young 15-year-old us, to get used to road life? And so they put me out with Truth. Suddenly I'm doing 5, 6 churches a week, living on a bus with like 20 people. And
Yeah. Well, that's actually a pretty good kickoff then because Truth was very well organized as far as, you know, um, just being able to take care of people. Now, look, if and I can have truth people here on the podcast, and I have a few, and we can tell some pretty crazy stories. Just a bunch of 20 somethings doing 300 shows a year on a bus, and you learn your own little your survival system or your political system with on that bus, but it was a pretty safe environment. Like that Roger knew what he was doing and it was very well run. Yeah. So
I got in
you're good
trouble
hands
with
there.
Roger.
Say that again.
I got in trouble with Roger because I was such a kid, and I just would pull pranks on people on the road, and he's like
He's like,
bringing
no,
me into his office
mm-mm.
for a sit down. And I think
Nikki,
it was in like
Nikki, meet me in my office.
I was in Sarasota one night doing their big Christmas tour, and
Uh-huh.
everyone's in tuxes and the whole thing. And we were at this event center that had costumes in the back. And I think during this real quiet Star of Wonder song, I came out in a snowman
Oh
costume.
no. Oh
Dancing
yeah. Yeah, no, no,
on
no. No. You can't do that to Roger. No, he takes all that stuff very seriously, especially those Christmas shows.
he had his he had his finger pointed at me as I ran across the stage. And he had a talk with my label, and he's like, I can't have her out here on the road with us anymore. She keeps doing this stuff.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. And then who was after Truth? Who'd you tour with after that?
Sierra and Greg Long.
Oh man, Greg.
Yeah, he's
What a
awesome.
great dude. I love
I had
him.
a great time. And that was like a 3, 4 month tour with
Uh-huh.
them. I did a few like Freedom Blast winter jams, and just in a whole bunch of solo dates. So I was always on the road.
Yeah. And how were your songs doing on radio at the time? Were you starting to get traction there?
Oh yeah, I had a number one with Everlasting Place, and then I had 3 more like top 5 songs too after that. So radio, it was in constant rotation for
Yeah.
those years. So
And that's weird too. It's weird hearing yourself on the radio for the first time, or, maybe not even hearing yourself, but hearing yourself listen to the countdown
oh
and
yeah.
hearing the people that you're around, like maybe you're wedged between Stephen Curtis Chapman and DC Talk or Point of Grace, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy that I'm hearing my name and my voice in between these artists that have just been around forever.
Oh, I know. And in the 90s, and especially in our house, like CCM music was everything. It was all I could listen to. So, being on, the charts with, I think at the time, like Crystal and Kirk Franklin were charting and all these people. And it was just such a big deal. And John Rivers Countdown,
Oh
magazine
yeah,
that I'm in Dallas. And I remember going to, was it KCRW was or KLTY,
yeah,
John Rivers Station, and
uh-huh,
they did brown bag events at the
yep,
mall,
mm-hmm,
and like 2,000 people in a mall for Christian music
yeah, I
and
remember those. Yeah,
lines of autographs. And it was just such a crazy experience.
yeah, it will change you if there's no way to be prepared for it. No matter how many people you have around you. I mean, yeah, it's a crazy thing. And again, being out with Jackie Velasquez for quite a while, I saw what she went through, and just being young and I don't know, just you change, you do change. You just kind of like it's hard to wrap your mind and your heart around what's actually happening and still be the same person after a couple of years. And happened to us too. I mean, you say you were 15 when you started. There's no way, you could kind of grasp what's happening. I mean, I was in my mid 20s and I still didn't know how to grasp what was going on and the demands that are put on you, but then also just the sheer amount of adulation that you feel around you. And there's nothing. It's a drug. When people respond to your
Yeah,
performance, it's a drug. It really is. And if you don't get that response over and over and over again, it's like going through withdrawal. And
absolutely.
you start looking at yourself thinking, am I a failure? Do people like me anymore? And it's just, and it
Uh-huh.
is, yeah, people haven't experienced it. It's a really weird thing. I just had coffee with a friend of mine today who's has a similar path, and we talked for a long time about that. Just that, that thing you get used to of people just loving you for the gift that you give them, and yeah, it
Right.
it, it takes you a different place for sure.
It does. And I'm an introverted person, oddly. I have like a performative side where I
Yeah,
can
I think
just,
most artists are. I think the majority of us are, and that's probably why we're good performers is we have that one place we can go and just
yeah.
let it all out. And then what do? As soon as it's over, whoop,
Yep.
back into the introvert side. But it's
Yeah.
not over, is it? And when we walk off stage, it's not over. We've got a whole nother life to live after that with fans and labels and all the people that want something out of you. It's yeah.
Right. And that's what makes it hard too, is, when you're an introvert, I relied on people to pursue friendship because I was, awkward in myself. And so when you have like visibility and you're out and you're touring and good things are happening, sometimes the people that are attracted to you are, attracted to what that is. Right. And so
Right.
you can feel like you have all these friends and all this good stuff happening. And then I would get to these places where these lulls and these drops in my career. And suddenly, my friendship shifts and all these things happen. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. My whole life, like people just came to me to be my friend. And I'm like, 41 and I'm like, how do I make friends? I'm learning these things because things were so different for so long.
Yeah.
And it's recognizing, as a teenager, like you said, even in your mid-20s, any age, you're not prepared for that situation.
hmm
I think especially when you're really young, like you don't get out of it unscathed to some degree, because I don't think humans are meant to be glorified in that way,
You're right. Yeah, you're
and
right.
when you detach from that and you try to untangle your identity from what that is, there's just always a process.
Yeah, preach it. That is every person I work with. I do a lot of consulting and coaching and mentoring now, and that's a big thing that comes up is how do we separate what people want from us and the value they place on us and the gift we bring from who we truly are when we're off the stage and in the quiet place. And, and when then eventually all of us go through that point. You said that in the ebbs and flows of your career, it's taken away for seasons.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you don't know, I tell this to young artists all the time. I've got several that I'm working with right now that are either heading into the studio or about to drop their first singles. And one of the first things I tell them when I start working with them is if you don't know who you are, they'll tell you who they want you to be.
Yeah.
And you will follow that if you don't really know. And at our age, being young like that, we don't know. We're just
No.
going after the opportunities and someone says, "Here, you want to sign a record deal?" We're like, "Yeah, of
Yeah.
course I do."
That's so true. And I mean, even in my career has had so many shifts, but I went through many phases where record labels are like, here's what you're going to do. Here's the style we're doing. Here's this. And it's like, it's honestly the last 5 years where it's like, wait, what do I sound like?
Yeah.
Who do I sing like? What does Nikki sound like? Because I've been paid since I was a teenager to sound however anyone hired me to sound.
Mm.
I made a career, doing sound alikes and demos and projects. And I couldn't tell you what my voice sounded like to save my life, and like
Wow.
just figuring things out.
Wow. I want to go on that journey with you. You talked about the different ebbs and flows of your career. So let's talk about the last time I think you and I actually saw each other was you mentioned being on Freedom Blast tour with us about halfway through. And
Wow.
were we in Albany, Georgia, or somewhere outside of Atlanta? It feels like we were somewhere in that part of the country. I don't know why I have Albany in my
East
mind.
Coast for sure. It was East Coast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And um, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I was on your tour during a time where I had met my very first boyfriend. And I had done like abstinence conferences, and that was a big part of my life. And I think many young Christian women were associated with True Love Waits or
Yeah,
Passion
uh-huh.
Workers
Yeah, it was a big
type of
deal.
stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And so that was a part of, my platform and my message, which I really authentically connected to at the time, and really meant something to me until I met my boyfriend and just didn't know how to handle, the situation of your first relationship and the whole thing. And then being unsupervised, on the road and things. But by the time I had gotten out with you guys for the Freedom Blast tour, I had found out I was pregnant on that tour, and I didn't know what I was going to do. At first I thought, okay, let's elope next week. And I remember going and sitting you guys down, and
Yeah,
Russ and Wayne, and saying like, hey, my boyfriend at the time, we're getting, married next week. And everyone's like, okay, cool, great. Like, congratulations. I remember there's like hugs all around and the whole thing. And I'm just, I'm the type of person that really can't hold in a secret and has to live my life in truth. I just do. I can't hide something. Um, so like I can't do this. These guys are great. I can't lie. I'm gonna tell them the truth. Tell them, that this is why I'm getting married, and not try to hide a honeymoon baby, in 4 months or whatever. It was just something that's out of my nature to do. So the next week I was like, okay, guys, the reason I'm getting married is I'm pregnant, and I just remember you and Mark and Kirk, and I remember Mark crying with me,
yeah,
and you guys were really emotional and just supportive and loving. And it was really, I couldn't have been with a better group of people to, share something so life altering. And I remember you guys said I could finish out the tour. You did not kick me off the tour, and gave me the opportunity to still finish it out, which I still am so grateful y'all did that. At that point, I remember I had a date or two where I was pregnant, and you guys knew, and I was signing autographs for these young women, and I couldn't finish it out. It was something to where I ended up telling everyone that I was going to leave. And
yeah.
I had my last night, and I'll never forget it. And I was standing in the middle of you and Mark and Russ, and we ended it with "You're my brother, you're my sister,
Yep,
so
yep.
take me back to heaven." And I'm just bawling. I'm like, this is maybe my last time to ever be in an arena singing Christian music.
Mm.
I remember how profound that night was. And it was the last time I was in an arena
Yeah.
singing Christian music.
Wow.
But it was very meaningful. And so I ended up leaving and getting married the next week.
Oh,
So
wow. Wow. Well,
yeah.
I remember I remember that time thinking this is the first time anything like this has happened on tour, like having to have this conversation and what do we do? And I just remember, all of us were, I think, at least Mark and I were parents at the time, and we understood what you were going through, and this is how you make your living.
Yeah.
And but do we, what do we do? Do we, you know, do we keep this a secret? Do we like Like it was a, I know we wrestled with it as well. And I think, bottom line is our love for you outweighed, what the consequences were down the road. And, we're just like, you're going to have a baby. It's awesome. But it does get a little sticky, right? In the whole Christian music thing and,
Yeah.
the things that are preached from the stage. And yeah, I just remember that being one of those times I look back on and go, that was another time I think we all kind of grew up another, in another mature way during
Yeah.
that time and having lots of conversations about. I remember Russ being so kind as well. I remember Russ just, just really putting his arms around you and loving you through
Yeah.
that. And he still is just one of the most wonderful men ever.
He was great. No, he's like, go get married. Who cares? Just keep going. You know?
Yeah, yeah. So what
Really.
happened? So you get married. I think you lost your deal, right? Did you lose your deal at
Oh,
Pamplin?
no, I didn't lose it. I actually tried to make a comeback, and I did like an apology tour.
Oh
And I
wow.
went to the radio stations to say I'm sorry and to talk about the situation. And I even made another album after that, with John and Dino and like Ted T and a couple different producers. And I tried, and I really didn't want to leave Christian music. It was just hard at that point because radio stations weren't playing it.
Yeah.
Retail stores wouldn't put it in their, on their floors or whatever. And then churches wouldn't book me. So there was, not all of them, I'm not going to
Yeah.
blanket statement, but there were a large enough amount in each section that would
Hmm.
make it virtually impossible to
Yeah.
any sustainability in the industry anymore. So it was clear, and it became hard too. Some of the interviews were hard, and I think even the the probing questions that people would ask me, and they were like I was on trial, and it was hard because I did go through a period of restoration and walked with the church and got some counseling from some great pastors, and just I walked through a process. But then I had to, like, every day it was like 51st dates, and I had to start all over
Mm.
again, and I
Wow.
had to prove to people that I was reliable or good enough to go out and could be trusted. And it took its toll when, they're like, but why did you, but was it continual sin? Was it this? Was it that?
I
And I'm
know
like,
it's weird, huh? It's such a
it,
weird place. You're held to such a high standard, which I mean, yeah, I mean, you're representing, you know, you're representing Christianity through your music and what it all stands for and what we believe, right? And but man, you make a, I'm gonna quote unquote mistake, and look, man, what a precious gift a child is, and you never look at a child as a mistake. You just don't. And but
right,
there all the things that surround it and how you get there. I get it, but it just gets really weird in the whole Christian music world. Is that
right,
you kind of you just get one strike, you
let's
know,
strike.
and
Yeah,
it lives with you, doesn't it?
it really did. It really did. It was hard because, and I came from ministry background, and I had seen various things. So, like with certain indiscretions and things, there's a hiatus
Yeah,
that happens. And that was nothing that I wasn't prepared for or willing to accept and walk through. It was the not, at what point am I okay here? At what point am I allowed to be a part of my family again? This
yeah,
family of artists loved so much. There was a grieving process for me because Christian music was, I mean, in everything I did, it was
yeah,
woven to my heart and soul. Like, it was very important to me. And I think people made these perceptions that it wasn't, or like she's out making a mockery of this, or, whatever. Like, that really wasn't the case. Like, I authentically really loved what I did and took it seriously. So to not be able to come back and be a part of it was, I think I went through some a road after that of some resentment towards Christians and God, and, had to kind of come back to my faith in a new way after, shedding all of what that was.
Yeah. How long did that take you, do you think?
A little too long, but I
Yeah.
got it was I would say there was like 11 years
Wow.
after that of like a real grappling time where I had to not associate God with like the unforgiveness that I felt, or didn't feel like God was constantly pointing a finger at me and
Mm.
not embracing and loving me. That was a long road. And I think, some people who've been in various, toxic church situations go through that too. And that's why I have a lot of grace for people who are deconstructing, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just sometimes there's just a little shaky period that people go through that they have, sometimes you have to. And I
Yeah.
think and fortunately for me, there was a strengthening in my faith that happened through that process. Even I went through like a little atheist period where you couldn't convince me God was real.
Yeah.
Like I through all of it. And, God like continually met me where I was at. And so I
Yeah.
feel fortunate.
Wow. Yeah. God's not afraid of us shaking our fist at him or, questioning him if he's real or not. He's not, that doesn't bother him. He just wants an opportunity to, continue to hang around, I guess. And, I'm glad that, uh, I'm glad you've figured some things out in that way. I mean, not just figured some things out. I mean, you're thriving now in who you are and what you're doing. So did you? So you walk away from the Christian music industry. What did you do after that? Like as an artist, as a vocalist, as a songwriter? I
Yeah.
know a lot of your story because I kept up with you. But where did you go right after that?
Well, I went into survival mode,
Yeah,
because music was all I knew. I
yeah.
didn't have, at that time, I hadn't even graduated high school
Oh, and you have a child now.
because, and I have a child and I don't even
Yeah.
have, a GED or anything. There wasn't, while on the road, my education wasn't looked at. So I ended up not doing it. And if you're, 16, 15, 17, and you have an opportunity to go to a Waffle House at midnight or do your homework, it's I'm out just having a good time. I didn't
Yeah.
go back and do my homework after the big show or, whatever it was.
And if you
Um,
haven't been to Waffle House after midnight, you're really missing a party.
really missing it,
I know. It's true. I'm not lying.
Yeah. Um, it was a survival mode. And so I only knew how to sing. I'm like, how am I going to do this? And so people like Jody McBrayer and other Christian singers started hiring me to sing their demos for their albums, their upcoming albums. So when songwriters, want to pitch a song to an artist to cut, they would hire me. And I think I was making like $75 to $100 a demo. And I just started stacking those up, and I started doing a whole bunch of sessions, which got me into background vocals
Yeah.
and
It
various.
strengthens your chops. It strengthens your chops in a different way than just singing the same songs every night.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And I was in Nashville, so like I would
Yeah.
do contemporary Christian or R&B or country, whatever style, they wanted me to do. And so I survived for several years doing that. And I would dabble in trying to make my own music and figure out what that was. And then I got a call from Carrie Underwood's music director to go out on the road and be her background vocalist
Was that
for
Mark? Was that Mark Childers?
Mark Childers.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we go
Yeah.
way back with Mark. Yeah,
Oh,
talk
he's
about the
great.
Truth Days, and yeah, he was our first bass player on the road with us. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was great. And he brought me in for like a sit down meeting. And I remember at this time I had two kids. I was living at the extended stay in Cool Springs.
Oh man.
And I get a phone call from Mark to go and tour with this new artist that has a Before He Cheats song on the radio. And I'm like, all right, like, let's go. And so I hopped on the road with her, and that really launched more of that world for me in doing, session singing, background vocals. But after her, I went to, I left Nashville and I moved to LA to, I was like, I can't be a background singer forever. I really have dreams in my heart still. Nashville, there's nothing that's happening for me here as a solo singer. So I moved to LA. I signed a big deal with Warner Brothers at the time with a duo called Nikki and Rich that I had. And I thought this was going to be like my breakthrough. That would have been my third record deal at the time. And we were on like all the Tonight Show stuff and doing sold out shows and commercials and films, and things really started taking off. And they had a new president come in and just like eradicate like 70% of the roster, in which we were a part of that fallout. And so lost my deal. I'm devastated at this point. And then I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not going to try to do a record label thing. I was like, I'm 28 now and I just can't do it anymore. I had such a
I look back now and just go 28. Oh, to be 28 again.
I mean, this finality feeling that I had at 28, 29 years old, like I'm at the end of my road. I better, do this now. I remember though being 26 and being in Orlando with, not Lou Pearlman. There was another person's wife, huge manager out there, and I'm singing a cappella song to her, and she's like, "How old are you?" I'm like 26, and she just kind of puts her head down. Like, what? It just makes you feel so. Johnny Wright's wife, that's who it was. And so, 26, she felt like I was probably a little past my prime to really make a difference in music. And I had that, that feeling always that I better figure it out, really soon. So from when I lost my deal with Warner Brothers, I started writing music. I also had ruptured like a vocal cord and was told by the top ENT laryngologist out here that I'd never have my range again. Like it was that destroyed.
Oh no.
And so, yeah, it was wild. So I decided, I'm like, I'm going to really start making pies and writing songs. So started just, digging into some other things and started getting work with Disney Channel and writing commercials for like Ford and different various films. And that started really taking off. And I realized I had a knack for that when my Nikki and Rich songs were getting placed in a whole bunch of movies and film stuff. And I'm like, I think I can write this kind of music and thrive in it. So I took that avenue. My voice started to come back, which my doctor called me Benjamin Button voice. They couldn't believe it. They're like, how do you even have a voice after the damage, that was done? And then I get a call from a guy, Tim Davis in California. And he's like, hey, there's this show Glee, and we need a singer on something. Can you speak Spanish? And I was like, I think so.
Give me 3 weeks.
Seriously, I called all my Spanish friends and I'm like, yeah, I can definitely do a bilingual thing. And it's like, we'll get here next week. It could be a situation for you. And so at the time I was filming a terrible indie movie in San Diego. And I told the director, I'm like, you don't understand. I think this avenue is what's going to pay me for years to come, which was, I'm glad I didn't stay to, make this movie the focus.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They let me leave, and I was supposed to be on set that day, and I drove to Calabasas. There's a guy, Adam Anders, who his wife, Nikki Anders, was in Avalon before.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, she's awesome. She's a great singer. And so I sing, and then Adam's like, where have you been? Get ready to make some money. Let's do this. I'm like,
wow.
All the way home.
Oh my gosh.
I had gone through so many hard knocks seasons, and that was another one coming out of losing the deal. And I was driving my free uh car for single moms that Saddleback Church gave me, and just
Oh,
life,
wow.
like, it was really tough. And so I started Glee, and then I started a Sunday night show in LA that really took off. And I did that for 7 years, and it was the biggest LA residency music show. And got to sing with Prince and Stevie Wonder and just all these
Wow.
different artists. And at that time, I'm now writing, doing a show, doing Glee, and like just stretching myself to every place that I could, and started a different career path.
Wow. Beyond what you could ever ask or imagine. It's just incredible. That's the power of
Absolutely.
just, let's just keep going. Just take one more step. Just, you know what? Wake up one more day. Let's do it again. And man, that's so compelling to hear your story of not just surviving, but thriving. I think I said it, in the opening, was that just mind blowing to see, to just, be with you that last Freedom Blast tour stop.
Yeah.
And then to see where you are now is just like only God can do that. And just to
Only
allow you just kind of wander around and figure it out. And it's almost like God winks at you, gives you a little side hug and goes, yeah, just wait. I got you.
Yeah, I feel like God is like, uh I'm going way back here, but like I feel like Frogger or something, and I'm going in between the traffic
Yeah.
to get to the other side, but he's making sure I don't get hit
Yeah.
along the way, and even some decisions were really hard to make, like getting off the road. I was offered a really big international tour before I took the jazz night show in LA. And it was like this act of obedience where it was like, no, that has to be pushed to the side. And I knew that my focus really wanted to be my kids and family. I'm like, I can't sustain this and give them, how it is touring away from your family.
Yeah.
And I was a single mom, and I'm like, who do they have? I don't have a spouse at home to make sure that some things stay, on track. Like, I can't juggle this life of being a single mom and touring and coming back, and my kids going, okay, where's my mother? So when I decided to quit touring completely and take this little hotel job, and just was like, okay, God, all right, I guess I won't go out, on the Katy Perry tour or whatever. I'm gonna sit in LA and sing in a lobby of a hotel, and just kind of laid it down. And it was so wild to think, I not only did I not miss out on anything, but like he 10, 20 times the amount of like connections and collaborations that happened with the best in the I mean, I'm like,
Wow.
one night I'm singing with Nick Jonas, or one night I'm singing with Dennis Rodman, or it's the weirdest
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff happened. But like, I never once felt like, oh, look at over there, I could have been over there. He always made where I was at like exponentially better than I could have asked or
Yeah.
imagined.
Wow.
Yeah,
And all because I mean, not all because, but it feels like part of that's a blessing of saying, I'm going to put my kids first. Like I'm not
yeah,
going to just go chase the the thing that's being offered to me and my kids not being taken care of.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I've always thought about that story in other parts of my life where I feel God calling me to something, and I'm like, no, no, no. Like, wait, yeah, he
Yeah,
knows best. Look at, he hasn't failed you yet, look at the past. So yeah, use that to trust God in all things, and where we're
incredible.
at.
And so
Yeah.
we're talking now, you're at home in California, or you're at a friend's house in California now.
At a friend's house, yeah, out here.
Yeah.
We're just following what we're saying right now, is we're following the green lights. And we were in Nashville, and we sold our house a couple weeks ago. We have a house we're building in Florida right now, but work is happening in Los Angeles. So I don't know. It's just that season of like trying things out and trying to solidify the next season in ways, while just feeling like he has to light our path right now.
Yeah. And you said you're 41? Is that what you said earlier? And to think that at 41, it's kind of like, and I'm 57, and I still feel every day, man, God, you've got something new for me today. Like wake up and go, okay, God, what adventure are we going to go on today? Sounds like that's where you are as well at your age,
Yes.
that you could never have imagined at 16, 17 years old that this is where you would be at this point in your life and still getting these crazy opportunities, huh?
Oh, it's wild. I can't believe, and music in itself is, and especially given the models of streaming and all the different things, it's not an easily sustainable
No.
app.
Mm-mm.
Hey, you have to have many irons in the fire and be multifaceted in
Yeah.
so many ways, just so that the rug don't get pulled out with one failed job or one failed endeavor. So my husband is really successful in the licensing sync world. He has a great little guy that's a little guy. It's called Louis 2. And and I have a girl too that's not you. I don't use my name. And so we have these, alternate personalities that do different kinds of music that sustain us, that aren't necessarily maybe our artistry that we would connect to who we are exactly. So he does that and I do that, and we both write for people, and then he produces, and he also does worship events and travels, and I'll do that with him in some ways too. And like we have like 20 jobs that we're always doing, but it keeps our life sustainable and going.
That's incredible. And so I mean, just talking to you over the past hour, I'm kind of checking off boxes of everything you could possibly do to have a successful career in the music industry. It feels like you've done almost everything. Is there anything on your bucket list, or just kind of anything out there you're like, one day if I could do that, that would kind of be like a cherry on top of my career?
Yeah, I think it would be Broadway. I definitely want to do a Broadway show at some point. And even like comedic acting or a script writing. I'm working on a book right now, my life story. So just there's a few more things that I want to accomplish and experience for sure.